The Arizona heat was calm, heavy, and stagnant. Time itself had apparently decided to cease breathing the instant Garrison did. The outside world, outside the desert, reverberated with the hum of insects, but indoors, there was nothing. Only stagnant air, quiet, and the burden of memories no one knew how to bear. Gwen was in the doorway of Garrison's former room. His bed was made, his dresser retained the little tray where he'd stored loose change and pocket blades. His go-to hoodie hung loosely on the back of the chair, washed many times until it was pale, but it still smelled of the cologne he'd worn, as if he might come walking in at any moment and make fun of her for appearing ready to cry. But Garrison wasn't returning. Not today. And Gwen wasn't crying. Not yet. She had cried enough at the funeral. Enough at the candlelight vigil Janelle organized. Enough when she went to pick up his uniform from the dry cleaner, because no one else could stand to handle it. The thing is, she didn't have anything left to cry about. What she had now were questions. She had stopped by her neighbor's mailbox that morning to try to be a helpful neighbor. A pile of bills, a brochure from a lawn maintenance company they didn't want, and one with her name on it, but forwarded from an entirely different address. Her father's. She furrowed her brow. Why in the world would Kody be receiving her mail? She opened it with her hand while ascending the steps. The instant she read the bolded text, she halted in mid-step. It was from an insurance company. Life insurance. Garrison. Her throat constricted. She stood up to the porch, sat down, and reread the letter slowly. It was official, dense with legal jargon, but one sentence sliced through it all like a knife. Beneficiary change request submitted March 5th. Status pending review. She blinked. Garrison had completed that policy years earlier. He'd explained it to her himself. If anything ever happens, he said, I want you to have it. You'll know what to do. Gwen had giggled at the time and didn't take it seriously. But Garrison meant it. He was always serious about protecting people he cared about. So why would there be a request to change the beneficiary? And why was the letter sent on from Kody's residence? Her palms began to dampen. She walked into the house and dialed the insurance company, keeping her voice firm but low. Hi, I received a letter regarding a policy I'm on. I believe someone attempted to alter it. The woman on the line was courteous, professional. Can you confirm your identity, please? She stated her name, her birthday, her address. Yes, the woman said after a moment. You're the primary listed on the original policy. But a request was submitted to freeze distribution, citing mental health concerns. The request came from a man named Kody Brown. He identified himself as the next of kin and stated that the beneficiary might not be emotionally stable enough to handle the payout responsibly. Gwen didn't speak. Miss Brown? The woman asked. She swallowed hard. Yeah, I'm still here. The woman hesitated. Would you like to invoke a dispute? No, said Gwen, her tone low but brittle. I'll take care of it. She hung up and glared at the floor for what felt like an eternity. Her pulse was drumming in her ears. Emotionally unstable, that's what Kody said about her? After all this? After skipping Garrison's last birthday? After being silent at the funeral? He didn't even cry. And now he was trying to save Garrison's honor by stealing it? She pulled on her jacket and picked up her keys. It was time for answers. Robin's house was just 15 minutes, but Gwen drove as if her tires were aflame. The whole trip, she thought of the same recollections stuck in an infinite loop. Garrison's tone, steady and flat, pronouncing, they never protected us, Gwen. We just got good at protecting ourselves. She pulled in crooked, didn't care. Approached the door, didn't knock. She opened it and entered as if she had every right. Robin spun from the kitchen counter, shocked. Gwen? Oh my, what are you? Gwen waved the letter. You know what this is? Robin blinked. That's not you know what this is. Gwen repeated, her tone stronger. You knew Kody was doing this? Robin hesitated. It's just precautionary. He was worried. You've had some emotional episodes online. Gwen laughed once, bitterly. So a few TikToks about the truth is what makes me unstable. Meanwhile, the man who abandoned half his kids and screamed at my mother every Thanksgiving gets to make legal decisions about my life? Robin stepped back. It's more complicated than that. No, Gwen said. It's really not. She headed down the hall before Robin could intercept her. Kody was in the den, phone in hand. He glanced up and his face went still. Gwen, don't, she said. Don't even begin. I was going to explain. Tell me how you attempted to deny my access to Garrison's life insurance, she bit out. Tell me how you imagined I wouldn't discover it. Tell me why you believe I'm so broken that I can't uphold my own brother's memory. He set the phone down slowly. It's not like that. Then tell me what it is like. Dad, she said. Because from where I stand, it appears you couldn't even meet my eyes when we buried him. But you had the strength to call a lawyer the moment he was dead. Kody got to his feet, palms out. You're young, you don't think. I was afraid you'd do something stupid. IR? Gwen nearly laughed again. You mean like fund a scholarship? Or pay off my loans? Or assist Mom in moving out of that apartment she barely manages now that Garrison's away? He didn't respond. Robin stood in the hallway, observing quietly. Gwen turned to her. You let him do this. You knew. You always know. And you do nothing. Robin's lip quivered. I thought you'd take it the wrong way. Don't get to lecture me about concern after you've treated us like we were background noise in your idea of a perfect family for years, she said. She moved away from him. Don't ever call me again. Unless it's to give back what belongs to me. What belonged to Garrison. Kody attempted to keep up with her, but she was already gone, shutting the door behind her, panting hard, hands shaking not with weakness, but fury. She drove for no destination. Streetlights blurred because she blinked too quickly. Then her phone vibrated. A text from Christine. Come over. I made tea. Gwen stopped the car and wept for the first time in days. It wasn't money. Not exactly. It was the sheer audacity, the deception, the ultimate evidence that Kody hadn't left them. He had worked against them. She pulled up at Christine's an hour later. The lights were warm. The porch had a peppermint smell. Gwen sat in silence on the couch for a very long time, drinking from a cracked mug. Christine waited quietly. At last Gwen stated, he attempted to steal it from me. Not only the money, Garrison's memory, like I wasn't deserving of keeping it. Christine crossed over the table and put a tiny leather-bound book in her hands. Garrison's journal. He asked for you to have this, she said. Gwen opened it hesitantly. On the first page was a handwritten note in his hand. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And you already know who never showed up. You were always the strong one. Gwen, you still are. Don't let them tell you otherwise. Ever. Her eyes went blurry, and that uncomfortable pull in her stomach. It wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was determination. Christine hardly spoke when Gwen read Garrison's journal. She didn't have to. The text on those pages filled in gaps Gwen wasn't even aware she had. Garrison was always taciturn, but his mind was loud in print. He wrote of feeling exhausted at being on eggshells, of being invisible, of Kody referring to him as disrespectful when all he wanted was attention. There were even some about Robin, how insincere her smile was, how she dragged Kody away from the rest of them like she was an emotional gatekeeper. But the one that lingered with Gwen the longest was one that had been written only 6 months prior to his passing. If something happens to me, I said to the insurance woman, I wanted it all to go to Gwen. I know she'll do something real with it. Not because she needs it, but because she remembers who we were, before he turned his back on all of us. She closed the journal and gazed out the window, the desert moonlight casting weak shadows over the tile floor. Her fingers clenched the edges of the leather cover. There was no room for question now. Kody hadn't overstepped. He had attempted to eliminate her, even when Garrison was away, and he thought he could pull it off. I'm going to fix this, she said softly, placing the journal down. I don't know how yet, but I'm not letting him rewrite the ending. Christine leaned forward. You're not alone. You've got me. You've got Janelle. You've got your truth. Gwen nodded, her voice firmer. Then I'm starting with the money. The following morning, she wrote to the insurance company once more, this time including the journal page, along with an affidavit that Christine assisted her in writing. It was painful but professional, declaring that the claim made by Kody not only was not true but also malicious. She outlined her plan, not to throw the money away, but to spend it the way Garrison would have wanted. A scholarship, a memorial, an opportunity to share the story the show never told. She clicked send and breathed a sigh of relief. But still, something didn't quite feel complete. Later that day, she visited Janelle's. The house was silent, too silent without the sound of Garrison's feet or the thumping of his music on the walls. I need to ask you something, she said, sitting at the kitchen table. Janelle set a mug of hot cocoa before her. What's on your mind? Did Garrison ever say the first time he signed up for life insurance anything about Kody, about concerns? Janelle gazed contemplative for a moment. He didn't say much, but I do recall one night. He was angry. Kody had told him he was selfish for wanting to live on his own and not be included in the unified family. Garrison said something like, I need to start making sure Gwen and the others are taken care of, because Dad sure won't. I figured frustration was talking. Gwen scowled. It was. He meant it. She took out her laptop and began researching dates, verifying the timeline. Garrison had died in March. Kody had made the change request only days afterward. But the signature. Something was not right about the scanned version she had received. It wasn't the chicken scratch typical of Kody's signature. She zoomed in. Her gut fell. Mom, she whispered. I don't think Kody signed this. Janelle leaned forward. The signature was cleaner, straighter, almost dainty. Robin, she leaned back in her chair, the heaviness of it settling in. Of course it was her. Kody might have spoken the words, but Robin brought them to life. She had a way of doing the dirty work without ever appearing to be guilty, keeping her hands clean as she moved the chess pieces along. The manufactured concern, the gaslighting, not new, but this was on a whole other level. She forged his signature. Gwen grumbled. Janelle's eyes widened. Are you sure? Not yet, Gwen replied. But I'm going to find out. That evening she texted Leon. She hadn't spoken to them in a while, not because of conflict, but because they had gone their separate ways. But if anyone knew how Robin worked in the shadows, it would be Leon. She told him everything. The insurance, the letter, the signature. Leon answered within minutes. I'll be honest, I saw Mom writing things for Dad before, signing things, stuff he didn't want to bother with. Especially around financial forms. She'd signed for him, always said it was agreed upon, but she had full access to all his stuff. Gwen looked at the screen, her mouth somewhat ajar. So you're saying this isn't the first time? Leon responded. Nope, just the first time someone's pushing back. The next day, Gwen made a decision. She wasn't visiting Robin's. She was visiting Kody's RV, the one he had been temporarily living in, away from the main homes, allegedly to clear his head. It was more like self-banishment. He opened the door, his expression bewildered. Gwen, she didn't knock. She entered and put a printed version of the signature on his little table. You know this? Kody glared down. Yeah, that's the one I signed. Are you certain? She asked. Because it doesn't look like any other signature of yours on any other paper. He swallowed. I was rushing. Robin may have completed it. Did she sign it? He hesitated once more. I may have requested that she do so. Or she did it without you asking. Gwen pressed. He averted his gaze. That was enough reply for her. You're afraid of her. She spoke low and even. I'm not. He bit out too sharply. You are. And you allowed her to hijack Garrison's memory. My future. Everything. It was an error, he grumbled. No, Gwen said firmly. It was a choice. Yours. And hers. He glanced up. What do you want? She moved in closer. I want you to know what it is to lose a child. And imagine you have someone attempt to rewrite what that child left behind. That's what you did. You didn't steal money. You attempted to erase his choice. You attempted to erase me. She rose to her feet. I've sent it all into the insurance company. If they file forgery charges, I won't stop them. If they don't, I'll still make it public. Not out of spite. Out of love. For Garrison. She turned to leave and she heard him whisper her name. She didn't turn around. She no longer needed his approval. That evening, she sat down again at her laptop. A new document. Garrison Brown Memorial Grant, a fund for children of estranged family. She had no idea how large it would become, but it would begin with his name and her truth. The first donation was from a person Gwen didn't anticipate. Mary. It was only $500, and the message was brief, for Garrison and for the rest of us who kept quiet too long. But Gwen read the message on the GoFundMe page longer than she intended to. It wasn't the money that caught her attention, it was the validation. Mary had seen so much go down on the sidelines for years, half in and half out of Kody's whirlwind. But this was different. Like even she couldn't pretend like what just went down didn't matter. In 3 days, the memorial fund had reached over $2,000. Not a huge figure, but enough that Gwen felt like she wasn't yelling into a vacuum. They were paying attention now. Supporters messaged her in private. Old sister wives followers, who once believed in the fantasy but long ago had pierced the illusion. Strangers sent the link. Some of them sent poems. Others told tales of estranged family, missing sibling, controlling parents. Gwen hadn't expected any of it. But she wasn't surprised. Grief had a way of bridging gaps, particularly when the hurt was too particular to be comprehended by anyone other than one. What she hadn't expected, though, was the call from Christine. "You might want to sit down," her mom said, voice tight. "What happened?" Christine hesitated. "Robin came over, crying, begging me not to turn the family against." Gwen snorted. "Bit late for that, isn't it?" She said Kody's having panic attacks. "That the stress is too much. She's scared you're trying to destroy what little peace they have left." Gwen rolled her eyes. "They made this. I did not send that letter. I did not forge his name. I did not falsify someone's mental health." "I know," Christine said. "But she's afraid. Afraid of being exposed. Afraid you're going to make this public." "I already have," Gwen said matter-of-factly. "I've just not named names." Christine was silent. "Then, what are you going to do if the insurance company approves the payment?" "I'll use it," Gwen said. "Every cent. For the memorial. For the scholarships. For whatever helps people like Garrison feel." Christine sounded proud. "I'll match whatever they send." "You don't have to." "I want to," Christine interrupted. "He was mine too." Later that night, Gwen and Gwendolyn met at a secluded diner outside the highway. It was sparsely populated, only the hum of the overhead lights and the occasional scratch of forks against plates. Gwen fidgeted with a French fry and Gwendolyn drank out of a milkshake. "So your dad attempted to steal from you." "That's a new one," Gwendolyn grumbled. "Technically Robin forged them." Gwen said. "Of course she did." Gwendolyn rolled her eyes. "Mom used to say Robin smiled like a saint and moved like a chess master." Gwen raised a brow. "Christine said that once when she didn't think anyone was." They both laughed for the first time in days. It didn't last, but it was enough. Gwendolyn leaned in. "You know you're doing the right thing, right?" "I'm not sure it feels right," Gwen admitted. "It feels messy, loud. It has to be," Gwendolyn said. "Because silence is what let all this fester so long." Gwen nodded. "You're not wrong." The next morning she received an email from the insurance company. "Pending review complete. Beneficiary status restored. Funds will be processed within 10 business days." No apology. No mention of the forged signature. Just cold, formal closure. But it was enough. Gwen settled back in a chair, allowing the tide of relief to wash over. Her phone vibrated again. This time, a text from Robin. "I didn't mean things to escalate like this. Can we talk? In person?" Gwen gazed at the screen, and then erased the text. That night, Janelle invited her over. The house was different, cozy somehow, as if the air had changed. "Garrison would have been proud of you," said Janelle, placing a folder in her hand. "And I think it's time you read this." Gwen opened. A note, folded and refolded many times, was inside. "In case anything happened, give this to Gwen. She'll know what to do." Garrison under the note were photos, drawings, blueprints for a shelter he wanted to open. Not professional, just hand-drawn maps and rough notes concerning resources, sleeping areas, teen support groups for teens who felt abandoned. He didn't want to merely give money, Janelle explained. He wanted to create something. He just didn't know how to go about it. Gwen stroked her fingers over the drawings, as if they were holy. "I do," she whispered. That evening, she filled in the memorial fund page. She included Garrison's drawings, his writing. She titled the project, "The Garrison Project, a Shelter for the Forgotten." The donations increased threefold in 48 hours. Christine brought a piece of land into play. Janelle began talking to builders. Even Peyton called, saying he was willing to contribute on the labor. Kody and Robin said nothing, but Gwen no longer cared. Her family was arriving. Her family. The ones who still had faith in connection, in expansion, in healing. And then the ultimate surprise. A letter from Mary, handwritten, honest, unfiltered. "I waited so many years for Kody to notice me, to appreciate me, and I saw him do the same thing to my child, that he's now done to you, to make them seem too unstable to trust. I don't want to sit in quiet anymore. If you'll let me, I'd like to assist." Gwen wept when she read it. She didn't know if Mary had changed, or if she just lost interest in what Kody believed. But either way, it counted. It all counted. One by one, individuals were emerging from the shadows, and the truth was standing taller than the lies ever had. Gwen drove back to Garrison's home one final time. She stood on the porch, inhaling desert wind, holding the keys Janelle had provided, and she whispered, "We're doing it, Gar. I'm going to build the place you always imagined. They tried to wipe us out, but you're going to be remembered." She pushed open the door and stepped inside, not just into the house, but into her future. The house was bare, but not still. In Garrison's old room, Gwen crouched next to a pile of boxes Janelle had set aside. Old shirts, childhood paintings, a lamp he'd never gotten around to discarding. She didn't know what she was searching for. Perhaps something to cling to. Something Garrison had touched, thought about, kept near him when things began to unravel. She discovered a shoebox at the bottom of the pile. On top was a sticky note, aged but readable. Gwen's eyes only. Her heart skipped. Inside, wrapped in an old flannel, was piles of folded-up notes. There were some receipts with scrawled lines, once torn from notebooks. Each and every one was a letter to her. "Gwen, if I am not here, it is because I was tired of the battle. But never be silent. You were always the clever one, the one who questioned. Never allow them to gaslight you into silence. Remember when we constructed the bookshelf and Kody said it was a waste of time? You set the wobble to rights yourself. That is what you do. You set to rights that which other people discard." Gwen blinks rapidly, her throat constricting. "I love you." Not past tense, always. She just sat there for almost an hour, reading each word. And when she stood up, she wasn't mourning anymore. She was constructing. Later that week, Christine introduced Gwen to a nonprofit advisor named Carla. She had experience in setting up grant foundations and funding local shelters. And she didn't ask a single invasive question. She just listened, took notes, nodded when Gwen showed her the sketches. "You've got something powerful here," Carla said. "It's not just a shelter, it's a movement. And it has a name. People will remember." Gwen smiled. "It's his name. That's all that matters." Carla tapped her pen. "What you'll need now is community support. Not just donors, advocates, family, friends, people who'll go on camera if you're ready to take this public." Gwen paused. She hadn't thought about media yet. But maybe it was time. She reached out to Maddie first. Maddie was in North Carolina these days, with kids and her own life. But as soon as Gwen described the project, there was no pause. "I'll do a recording," Maddie replied. "Whatever you want." Garrison was better than this. "You're giving it to him." In 3 days, Gwen had 6 video recordings. Janelle, Christine, Maddie, Gwendolyn, even Logan. All of them talking in soft but firm tones about who Garrison was, what he hoped for, how he was wounded by what their father didn't do. They didn't specifically mention Kody. They didn't need to. The silence spoke louder than words. Gwen cut it together and published it on her social media, with the caption, "He didn't only serve our country, he served this family, until it destroyed him." The video reached 100,000 views within 2 days. Donations flooded in. Messages overflowed. Reporters began calling. And then Kody called. She disregarded the first 2. Picked up the third out of sheer curiosity. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded. "No hello. No warmth. I believe you already know," she said. "This is making us look bad." "You made yourself look bad," Gwen said quietly. "I'm just telling the truth." Robin's in tears every day. The kids are confused. This is dismantling the family. Gwen laughed once, hard and brief. "Kody, the family broke apart years ago. You simply quit paying attention when it ceased revolving around you." There was silence. "Then you don't know what it's like to be pulled in all directions." "I know exactly what it's like," Gwen fired back. "We were all drawn into your moods, your disappointment, your rules that only ever applied to some of us. We bent until we broke." Kody's voice rumbled lower. "You're angry. I get it. But you don't need to burn the whole house down." "I'm not," she told him. "I'm just going out the front door. You can remain in the smoke if you want." She hung up before he had a chance to respond. That evening she received a text message from Aurora, Robin's daughter. "I'm sorry for all of it. I didn't know what was occurring. I didn't know they forged anything." Gwen glared at the screen for an extended period of time. She believed her. Aurora had always attempted to remain neutral, devoted to both parties, but now she was beginning to notice the cracks as well. A later message was received, this one from a producer at a small documentary firm. "We'd be honored to document your experience, not for sensationalism, but for effect. Allow us to assist in telling Garrison's story." Gwen didn't reply immediately. She phoned Christine instead. Would Garrison have wanted that public? Christine was subdued. I believe he would have wanted you to be heard. However you decide to do that, he'd be proud. Gwen nodded deliberately. Then I'm saying yes. 2 weeks later, cameras rolled. Not glitzy, not intrusive. Just her and a chair and Garrison's flannel folded over her lap. She spoke of being the daughter of a man who appeared only for his favorites, of seeing her brother spin away silently, of how the grief wasn't instantaneous, it was in layers, as if peeling away skin. And then she spoke of healing, of creating something out of her pain, of not letting the quiet have its way. The crew didn't take many after the fact questions. They didn't need to. The film did the talking. When the preview of the documentary hit the internet, it went viral. Not because it was salacious, but because it was honest, raw, unapologetically human. And then something Gwen never thought would happen occurred. Solomon messaged her, Kody and Robin's son. He was young, still trapped in the midst of his parents' story. But the message was brief. I watched your video. I'm proud of you. I miss Garrison too. Gwen read it 3 times, tears running down her cheek. It was then that she realized. It wasn't about Garrison anymore. It was about them all. All the siblings who were left behind in the rubble of one man's hubris. And now, the reconstruction had finally started. Ribbon cutting was 2 weeks off. The building wasn't complete. Paint drying on interior walls. Final plumbing still being inspected. But Gwen didn't mind. The sign was in place. The walls were erected. And the vibe of it all already existed. The Garrison Project. A place to breathe. That was what they'd ended up naming it. It wasn't a shelter. It was an open space for teens and young adults who had fallen between the cracks, most particularly those from fractured family, former faith community, or homes that preached one, but practiced silence. The task was easy. Let them breathe, let them be, let them speak, and above all else, let them be seen. Christine and Janelle patrolled the grounds with her on a daily basis now, ticking off work, assisting with painting trim, coordinating volunteer schedule. Gwendolyn was constructing art therapy sessions. Even Leon had volunteered to assist in creating gender-inclusive programming for LGBTQ+. Gwen was constructing something much larger than she'd anticipated. But there was still one challenge she hadn't encountered, or rather one individual. She hadn't seen Kody in 3 weeks, not since their last phone call. But news was spreading, not only about the project, but the documentary, about the fund, about the developing community around Gwen. And now he's asking to meet. She sat on the steps of the building, the evening before the walkthrough was set to go on, hands clasped over a chipped cup of lukewarm coffee, when Christine came by. He's at the gate, said her mom quietly. Gwen didn't respond immediately. I don't need anything from him, she said finally. I know, Christine said, but perhaps it's time he hears that. So Gwen stood. The sun was dipping low, bathing the dirt lot and metal fence in a golden light. There he was, standing uncomfortably beside the truck, hair more rumpled than it ever was, arms crossed as if he was protecting himself from something more than wind. She didn't break the silence. Neither did he. They stood, the silence hanging between them like a canyon. Eventually Kody moved closer. I read the sign, he said. It's lovely. Not for you, Gwen said calmly. He nodded. I know. She waited. I was going to say. He paused. I never intended to hurt you. Or Garrison. I just didn't want to have to cope with the loss, she asked. Didn't want to be the dad who confesses that he failed. I was afraid, he acknowledged, voice cracking just enough to indicate he wasn't kidding.
What?
Not of him. Of what it said about me that I couldn't keep the family together. You couldn't, Gwen said. And that's fine. But lying, forging signatures, accusing me of being unstable, he flinched. That wasn't me. Robin did it, but you let her. That counts. Kody nodded down. I lost a son, he said softly. We all did, Gwen breathed. But the difference is we didn't hide from it. We lived through it. We constructed from it. He glanced up. You're strong. I had to be. I'm sorry. Gwen trusted him, but she knew sorry wasn't sufficient. I'm not doing this to embarrass you, she told him. I'm doing it because he was worthy of more. And because there are children out there who still don't have a Garrison to admire. So, I'm providing them with one. Kody moved forward, more cautiously this time. May I make a donation? She blinked. He pulled out a folded check from his coat pocket. Don't do this because you feel guilty, she said. Do it because you mean it. And if you ever tell people you were part of this, make sure you include the part where you almost weren't. He smiled weakly. Deal. She took the check. and went back inside. She didn't hug him, but she didn't close the door either. Hours later, she sat in front of her computer, completing paperwork. The opening day for the shelter was scheduled. Volunteers were booked. Local media would cover it. Even the mayor had issued a letter of support, and in her email, yet another message from Mary. I saw the documentary 3 times. You made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. If there's anything I can do, I'm yours. Gwen replied. You already did. You saw me. That's enough. The morning after, the paint trucks arrived just at dawn. Gwen and Gwendolyn strolled the corridors, giggling over the twisted doorknob in the staff room and how the kitchen tiles didn't exactly match the color sample. Christine arrived with donuts. Janelle made coffee in the break room they'd converted into ad hoc HQ. And at noon, the first official sign-up showed up. A teenager, maybe 17. Hoodie pulled low, eyes cautious. Is this the place for people like, not really churchy anymore? Gwen smiled gently. It's the place for people who've been told they don't belong, but do. The kid nodded. Cool. He stayed. 8. Talked to one of the counselors. Drew a little on the whiteboard wall in the art room. Later, Gwen found what he'd left behind. Just 2 words. Thank you. She sat down and gazed at it. It all the pain, all the resistance, all the betrayal had led to this. And it was worth it. That night, she stood before the small crowd in attendance for the preview tour. Cameras flashed, microphones swooped. But Gwen wasn't paying attention to that. She was paying attention to the names. Christine, Janelle, Gwendolyn, Leon, Maddie, Solomon, Aurora, even Mary, the family who remained. She stepped up to the podium. This home was created in sorrow, she started. But it thrives because of love. She hesitated. We were taught for years that family is everything, but we learned that truth is everything. And love without truth is just control masquerading as care. There were tears, applause, but above all healing. And in the rear of the room, standing in quiet contemplation, Kody observed, not as patriarch, but as a man finally learning what leadership actually looked like. Not control, not silence, but a daughter, refusing to be erased. A month later, the shelter was open. Gwen stood under the sign of the Garrison project and saw a team of teenagers dig in the courtyard to plant the first tree, a pear tree. They had picked it out together, not because it was lovely, but because it produced fruit, because it gave back. Gwen appreciated that to her core. So much of her existence had been devoted to giving to those who could not accept it, to a father who accepted love as duty, to a family that had been more about survival than love. But now, it was different. These children, these strangers, were becoming the family she never thought she'd have. A girl asked her if Garrison had liked trees. Gwen smiled. He liked things that lasted. The roots were already established under their feet. That afternoon, she entered her office, once Garrison's den, now converted into a peaceful room with a desk, a couch, and a wall full of handwritten quotes of journal entries he had left behind. She sat in front of her desk and opened an email from a national news website. They wanted to highlight the project, as well as Gwen's personal story. Christine had warned her the attention would increase quickly. Janelle had asked her politely to get ready, but Gwen hadn't given permission yet. She read the email again, then glanced at the framed message on her desk, the one Garrison had scrawled in blue marker on the back of a pizza receipt. If you have the opportunity to share our story, Gwen, share it loud. Don't fear the consequences. The truth resonates longer than lies. She pressed reply. Yes, let's discuss. Laughter outside her office window came from the kitchen. Music had been turned on. She heard the sound of Gwendolyn's voice, poking fun at someone over their 2000s emo band choice. Leon jumped in with a Paramore defense. And somewhere in the middle of it, Kody's voice, low, uncertain, but present. He was over by the big table, hands in his coat pockets, chatting with a volunteer. Gwen stood in the doorway, not leaving, not interrupting, just observing. He'd begun to appear once a week, not with ultimatums or lectures, just cleaning the sidewalk, assisting in repainting the gate, sitting at the back of the staff meetings. He never mentioned Garrison, but he came, and that was more than Gwen ever imagined she'd get. Robin, however, hadn't shown up once. Gwen had stopped holding out hope for her too. Sometimes love doesn't break, it just hides in the shadows, too broken to hold up in the light. Gwen had learned to accept that. She wasn't building this house for Robin. She was building it for the children who still needed somebody to tell them, "You matter. I see you. You get to stay." That evening, Mary arrived with a box of journals and a large tub of lavender-scented lotion. Therapy night, she grinned. I promised the girls I'd teach them how to make hand salves. Gwen chuckled. You're turning into a youth group grandma. Mary shrugged. Somebody has to be. After the workshop, Gwen sat with Mary on the front porch. The air smelled like citrus trees and fresh soil. The stars blinked quietly above. I should have left sooner, Mary volunteered eventually. When I realized how it was going, but I was waiting for someone to pick me. You have time now, Gwen answered. Mary smiled quietly. And I pick you. That did it. The following morning, Gwen facilitated a reflection circle in the art room. Her and 8 others, sitting on cushions on the floor, each offering pieces of themselves. One of the boys, Elijah, hadn't said much since he got there. He hardly looked anybody in the eye. But today, he raised his hand. I lived with my uncle, he spoke slowly. He told me family was sacred. But sacred things shouldn't make you feel little. No one interrupted. Gwen leaned forward carefully. I didn't flee, Elijah said. I just stopped going home. Someone gave him a tissue. Gwen reached out. You're allowed to grow out of places that stopped growing with you. He nodded. That afternoon, she took the letters Garrison had left her, the shoebox full of ink and memory, and turned them into a printed booklet. The letters left behind, reflections from a brother who still believed. Each page had one quote, one sketch, one small truth. They placed a copy in every room of the shelter. And one more, sent anonymously to Kody. She never asked whether he had read it. But 2 days after that, a follow-up check came in the mail monthly. He did not sign it with flair. Just in memory of our son. Gwen did not cry. Not this time. Because it was no longer pain. It was peace. That weekend, they opened the shelter's first community open mic. A few teenagers read poetry. A girl sang a new song. A boy read a letter he'd written to the father who never arrived. And then, everyone's shock, Gwen went up to the mic. She produced a creased note from her jeans pocket. This was the last thing Garrison ever wrote to me, she announced, her voice firm. Don't let them shut you up, Gwen. You were born loud. Stay loud. She gazed out over the room, at Christine, Janelle, Mary, Leon, Gwendolyn, Solomon, even Aurora, who had arrived unobtrusively and sat in the back, eyes brimming with tears. And she concluded with this: we're all born into stories, but we don't have to live in them. We can write new ones. This is ours. The audience stood and applauded. And in the background somewhere, Kody dabbed at his eyes, when he thought nobody noticed. He wasn't the hero of this tale. Yet for the first time, Gwen understood. He didn't have to be. She was. The next morning, when the desert sun resumed its brightness in the courtyard once again, Gwen strolled by the pear tree. It had already begun to bloom, green leaves reaching up toward the sky. She stooped down and put a stone next to its roots. An ordinary stone, painted white. On it she'd written, "One life, 100 echoes." Garrison was not forgotten. He was only just beginning. And so was she.